Welcome, dear friend. I know you watch this video to fall asleep. So before that, like, comment, and share this video. Also, where are you from and what time is it where you are from? You wake at 3 in the morning, heart racing, palms sweating, your mind spinning through catastrophes that haven't happened yet. Your body tenses as if danger is imminent, though you're lying safely in your bed, alone in your dark room, completely secure and yet completely terrified. This anxiety, this familiar weight crushing your chest, arrives without warning or obvious cause. You felt it 100 times before, that sudden acceleration of fear that seems to come from nowhere, building itself on fragments of worry about work, relationships, health, the future, everything and nothing all at once. You know you should sleep, but your mind won't stop. The thoughts come faster, spiraling, each one generating another until you're caught in their current, pulled deeper into dread. You wonder if this will ever change, if you'll always wake like this, trapped between wakefulness and nightmare, knowing you have to function tomorrow, but unable to convince your nervous system that there's no danger. The clock glows green, 3:47 a.m. You've heard people mention something called Buddhist teachings, meditation practices that supposedly bring peace. But sitting still seems impossible when your mind is screaming at full volume with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Still, you're desperate enough to try anything. Desperation has a way of opening you to possibilities you might normally dismiss. You find yourself researching late into the night, or what's left of it, discovering a small meditation center about 2 hours away, a place where a teacher offers intensive retreats focused on understanding the nature of fear itself. Understanding, not eliminating, not getting rid of it, but understanding it. The center accepts walk-ins for single-day programs. It's a long shot, and you know it, but something inside pushes you to go anyway. You imagine having even a single day without this constant undercurrent of dread would be worth the drive, worth the uncertainty. By dawn, you've made the decision, and once the decision is made, something shifts. Not dramatically, but noticeably. The sense of taking action, of doing something rather than just suffering through another night, brings a small amount of relief. You shower, pack a bag with water and comfortable clothes, and get in your car while the city is still mostly quiet. As the highway stretches before you, the panic subsides slightly, perhaps because you're finally taking action, or perhaps because the motion itself is soothing, perhaps because you feel like you're driving toward help rather than being trapped. The closer you get to the meditation center, the more nervous you become, but it's a different kind of nervous, anticipatory rather than catastrophic. This might actually help. Or it might not, but at least you're trying, and trying is something. The meditation center sits nestled at the edge of a forest, smaller than you expected, built of simple wood and stone with a parking area that holds maybe a dozen cars. There's nothing fancy about it, nothing that screams, "This place will fix you," and somehow that makes it feel more credible, more honest. You pull into a spot and just sit for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, even though the engine is off. The anxiety is back now, full force, as if your arrival has triggered some internal alarm. What if this is a waste of time and money? What if the teacher takes one look at you and realizes you're too broken, too deep in this pattern for any teaching to reach? What if you have another panic attack during the session and have to leave humiliated in front of strangers? What if you're somehow beyond help? These thoughts arrive like uninvited guests, each one as real and compelling as the sweat on your palms, the tightness in your throat. You step out of the car anyway, because staying in it won't help and you know it. Your legs feel slightly unsteady as you stand, and you have to consciously check that your breathing is happening. A woman appears at the front door as if she's been expecting you, because maybe she has, maybe she sensed your arrival, and she smiles without judgment or pity. She's maybe 60, with grey hair and kind eyes that seem to have seen people like you before, many times before. People showing up desperate at the edge of their rope, hoping for anything, any possibility of relief. She introduces herself as Sarah and leads you through a simple hallway decorated with nothing but wood and a few plants into a small meditation room. 3 other people are already there, sitting quietly on cushions arranged in a circle. None of them look like they're in crisis. They look peaceful, settled, as if they already know some secret you haven't learned yet. Sarah gestures to an empty cushion and suggests you remove your shoes and settle in whenever you're ready. You do, your body feeling enormous and awkward as you arrange yourself on the cushion. Your back not quite straight, your legs already uncomfortable. The room smells like incense and something else, something clean and woody and vaguely ancient. There's a window that looks out onto trees, and somehow that helps. At least you can see nature if things get too intense. Sarah sits across from the circle and looks directly at you. Not at everyone, but at you specifically. And you wonder if your panic is that obvious on your face, or if she's just intuitive. Intuitive in a way that comes from years of practice and presence. She begins to speak, her voice quiet but steady, filled with a kind of confidence that comes from knowing something you don't yet know. Before we practice, she says, I want to acknowledge that many of you are here because you're struggling. Maybe anxiety, maybe other difficult experiences, maybe you were skeptical but desperate. Maybe you've been meditating for years but it's stopped working. Maybe you're here because nothing else has. Whatever brought you here is exactly what needs to be here. You feel something in your chest shift slightly at these words. Permission, maybe. Permission to be broken and still worthy of being in this room, still worthy of care and attention and teaching. She continues, her gaze still soft but penetrating. In Buddhism, we don't teach that anxiety is something to defeat or overcome like an enemy you need to fight and conquer. We teach that anxiety is actually showing us something important about how our minds work, about the patterns we've built and reinforced that create suffering. Today, we're going to explore what's actually happening when you feel anxious. She stands and walks to a small table where she pours water into 5 glasses, 1 for each of you. She brings 1 to each person, and when she reaches you, her hand is steady and warm, almost conspiratorially present. We're going to start with something simple, she says. We're going to sit together and notice what's happening in this moment. Not fix it, not fight it, not change it. Just notice it with kindness, with the same kindness you might show to a scared child or an injured animal. Just notice. As the session begins, Sarah guides you through a basic breath awareness practice, and immediately you struggle. Your mind feels like it's moving at 3 times normal speed, while your body is supposed to sit still and just breathe. She seems to anticipate this. Your mind might be very busy right now, she says, and you almost laugh at how obviously true this is. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want to observe. In Buddhism, we teach that anxiety doesn't come from external circumstances alone. It comes from a fundamental pattern in how the mind relates to experience. She pauses, letting this land. When you feel anxious, what's actually happening is your mind is generating thoughts about what might happen in the future, catastrophes, failures, dangers, and then treating those thoughts as if they're real and happening right now. Your body believes the thoughts and triggers a fear response. The fear creates more thoughts. The thoughts trigger more fear. It becomes a loop. You recognize this immediately. This is exactly what happened at 3 a.m. Your mind spinning scenarios. Your body reacting as if those scenarios were real, even though nothing was actually happening. The question becomes, Sarah continues, where does the anxiety actually live? Does it live in the future event you're worried about? No, that hasn't happened. Does it live in your current situation, You're sitting in a safe room. So where does it live? She lets the question hang there. One of the other students, a woman with curly hair sitting to your left, speaks up. In our minds? Sarah nods. Yes, but more specifically, it lives in a particular way. The mind is using thought. Anxiety is your mind doing what minds do very well, creating narratives, imagining possibilities, trying to protect you by worrying in advance about what might go wrong. This is actually a feature of the mind, not a bug. The problem isn't that you have anxious thoughts. The problem is that you believe them completely and treat them as commands, rather than just thoughts passing through. She sits back down and looks at each of you. A thought arrives. What if I fail at my presentation? Your mind treats this as real and urgent. Your body prepares for crisis. But the thought is just a thought. It's not a prediction. It's not a prophecy. It's just a neural pattern, a habitual way your brain has learned to work, because at some point, maybe you did fail at something, or you saw someone else fail, or you learned to be cautious. Your brain learned to generate these anxious narratives as a form of protection. You feel something ease inside you as she speaks, though you're not sure why. Maybe it's the permission to stop fighting the anxiety. Maybe it's the simple explanation that your mind isn't broken, just doing what brains do. Sarah continues. In Buddhism, we call this the nature of mind. The untrained mind believes every thought, follows every impulse, and creates suffering through resistance and identification. It says, I am anxious. This anxiety is me. This anxiety defines me. This anxiety is a problem that shouldn't be here. She pauses. But if we look carefully, anxiety is just energy. It's just a pattern of activation in your nervous system combined with a particular direction of thought. It's not you. You are the awareness that can notice the anxiety. You are the awareness that can observe the thought without being captured by it. This distinction hits something deep. You've spent so long identifying with the anxiety, believing it was who you are, that you'd never considered the possibility that you might be something that could observe it rather than something that is it. She guides the group through a short practice where you learn to notice when thoughts arise without automatically following them. It's harder than it sounds. Your instinct is to grab onto worries and spin them into elaborate narratives, but with gentle instruction, you begin to see them arise and pass like clouds in a sky. One student mentions that it's strange how the thoughts keep coming, even when you don't want them. Sarah responds with a story. She talks about a man who spent years trying to force his mind to be quiet, who would get frustrated, when anxious thoughts appeared during meditation, creating more anxiety about the anxiety itself. She describes how he eventually learned to observe the thoughts with curiosity instead of judgment, noticing how they changed when he stopped fighting them, how they seemed less solid and compelling when he didn't grab onto them. The point, Sarah says, isn't to achieve a blank mind. The point is to change your relationship with what's already there. Right now, your anxiety has your complete attention and your belief. It owns you. But what if you could change that? What if you could notice anxiety arising and say, this is just a pattern my mind is running, just old programming trying to protect me, and it doesn't need my energy right now. That's the beginning of freedom. She guides another brief practice, focusing specifically on what anxiety feels like in the body rather than what thoughts accompany it. You notice the tension, the constriction, the way your shoulders hunch up toward your ears. But you also notice that when you simply observe these sensations without the story, without thinking about what they mean, they change. They soften. They move. They're not as solid as they seemed before you started paying attention. After a short break where everyone is given water and a piece of fruit, Sarah brings everyone back into the circle, and you notice you feel slightly more settled. The anxiety is still there, but it seems less urgent somehow, less like an emergency. Your body has had a brief respite and seems to be remembering that it can relax. Sarah begins the next teaching by holding up a stone, smooth and round, from a bowl on the table near her. The stone is perhaps 3 inches across, the kind you might find on a beach after years of being tumbled by waves. She lets each of you hold it for a moment, and when it reaches you, you're surprised by how warm it is, warmed by the other hands that held it before yours. The warmth is oddly comforting, and you find yourself wanting to hold it longer. This stone, ni, Sarah says, once you've all reluctantly returned it, is the same stone it was 1 billion years ago when it was sharp and angular, freshly broken from a mountainside. But it's also completely different because of all the elements it's experienced. Rain, wind, sun, collisions with other rocks, time itself. Every single thing that happened to it changed it. And each change happened at a specific moment in time. The stone is constantly becoming something other than what it was. This is the Buddhist teaching of impermanence, and it's crucial to understanding anxiety. She sets the stone back in its bowl and lets the teaching settle for a moment. Anxiety thrives on the assumption that things are solid and permanent. You have anxiety now, therefore you'll have anxiety forever. This problem is permanent. This situation is permanent. That future event will definitely happen. But nothing is permanent. Not the anxiety, not the situation, not even your sense of self. She leans forward slightly, and her intensity increases. When you experience anxiety, part of what makes it so compelling is that it feels solid, real, unchanging, like this is who you are and how things are. But if impermanence is actually the fundamental nature of reality, and physics confirms this by the way, then anxiety too must be impermanent. It will change. It will pass. The only question is whether you spend the time while it's passing in resistance and struggle, fighting against reality, or whether you allow it to move through you like weather moving through the sky. One of the other students, a man in his 50s with kind eyes, asks how you're supposed to allow something painful to move through you when your most basic instinct is to stop it, to escape it, to make it go away. Sarah smiles as if this is the most important question anyone could ask, and her entire demeanor softens. Fear, she says simply. Fear is what makes us try to stop anxiety. We're not just experiencing anxiety, we're afraid of the anxiety itself. We're afraid it will overwhelm us, that it will never end, that it will drive us crazy, that it means something terrible about our character or our sanity. So we create a second layer of suffering on top of the first. We fight the anxiety. We think angry thoughts at ourselves for being anxious. We berate ourselves. We try to suppress the feeling through force of will. We distract ourselves with work or screens or anything. We do anything but allow it to be what it is, which is just a feeling, temporary and impermanent. She stands and walks over to the window, moving slowly and deliberately, and everyone's gaze follows her like a compass needle. She stands in silence for a long time, Ong moment, looking out at the trees beyond. Notice that clouds pass through the sky, she says without turning around. We don't see the sky trying to stop the clouds, trying to suppress them, or fight them, or reject them. The sky doesn't say, "These clouds shouldn't be here," or "I refuse to accept this weather." The sky simply allows the clouds to move through. The clouds pass. They always pass. And the sky remains. It's not damaged by the clouds. It's not harmed by them. The clouds come, the sky holds them, and then they move on. She turns back to face the group, and there's something in her expression that makes you believe her completely. Your awareness is like the sky. Your anxiety is like the cloud. The anxiety will pass if you stop trying to fight it, if you stop trying to control the weather of your own mind. She sits back down. In fact, the more you try to control it, the more solid it becomes. It's like trying to push water. The harder you push, the more it flows around your hand. But if you simply rest your hand in water, it moves naturally, flows where it needs to go. Sarah spends the next part of the teaching, perhaps 40 minutes, going into depth about how fear of fear creates a vicious feedback loop that intensifies anxiety beyond its original intensity. She explains the mechanics with clarity. When you feel anxious, if you then become afraid that the anxiety will get worse or that you can't handle it, that secondary fear triggers more anxiety in your nervous system, which generates more fear, and suddenly what started as mild nervousness or a reasonable concern becomes a full-blown panic attack. She describes the physiology of this in simple, understandable terms. An anxious thought activates your sympathetic nervous system, releasing stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Your body feels these hormones flooding through it and interprets this sensation as confirmation that there really is danger present, even if you're sitting safely in a room. This generates more anxious thoughts. What if this anxiety gets worse? What if I lose control? What if I'm having a heart attack? These thoughts trigger the release of more stress hormones, more activation of the nervous system. Round and round it goes, each layer feeding the next, creating a tornado of anxiety that feels like it might actually destroy you. The breaking point, she explains, is when you stop adding the second layer. When anxiety arises, instead of thinking, oh no, I'm getting anxious, this is bad, this shouldn't be happening, I can't handle this, you think, okay, anxiety is present right now. This is what anxiety feels like in my body. Let me notice it without judgment. You stop fighting the wave, and you stop believing the catastrophic narrative your mind is creating. She guides a longer meditation practice now, perhaps 35 minutes, one specifically designed for working with anxiety while sitting. She asks you to deliberately bring to mind something that makes you anxious, something real and specific from your life, but to watch your mind's response rather than getting caught in it and following it down the rabbit hole. You think about your work situation, the presentation you're supposed to give next week to senior leadership. Immediately, your mind spins scenarios with vivid detail. You mess up, you freeze, people lose respect for you, you lose your credibility, your career trajectory changes. You get passed over for promotions, you eventually lose your job, you lose your house, you end up alone. But as you sit and notice these thoughts arising like a parade without trying to stop them, something shifts inside you. They're still there, the thoughts are still happening, but they're like someone telling you scary stories in a dark room. You can hear the stories, sure, but you don't have to believe them. You don't have to run around looking for the monsters the stories describe. The stories exist, but they're just stories. Sarah's voice guides you gently back and forth between deliberately creating tension in your muscles and then releasing it, helping your body learn that it has the capacity to release the fight or flight response. She teaches you to consciously relax the muscles that tighten when you're anxious, showing your nervous system that there's no actual threat in this moment. She walks you through progressive muscle relaxation, but she does it while you're sitting, showing you that you don't need perfect conditions or a safe place to practice presence. You can do this anywhere. By the end of this practice, you notice your shoulders have dropped an inch. The knot in your stomach has loosened slightly. Your breathing has become fuller and slower without you having to force it. You haven't achieved perfect peace or eliminated the anxiety entirely, but something has genuinely shifted. It's subtle, but it's undeniably there. After lunch, which everyone eats mindfully in the dining area without talking, Sarah invites the group to take a walking meditation in the forest behind the center. She explains that the teaching doesn't only happen while sitting still. The teaching happens in how you relate to every moment. You walk slowly along a narrow path bordered by tall trees, and Sarah instructs you to pay complete attention to each step. Feel your foot leaving the ground. Feel it moving through the air. Feel it making contact with the earth. That's all. Just this step, just this moment. Your mind immediately wants to wander to tomorrow's work, to your list of worries, to why you're here, whether this is working. But each time you notice, you gently bring attention back to the physical sensation of walking. The forest smells like damp earth and trees, and you find yourself actually noticing the smell because you're not lost in thought. You see a spider web strung between two branches, jeweled with moisture, and the beauty of it actually reaches you because you're present enough to see it. The movement of leaves in the breeze becomes interesting, becomes alive, in a way it never has before. There's something almost startling about this. How vivid reality becomes when your attention is actually here, instead of somewhere in your mind creating fear stories. About halfway through the walk, Sarah stops the group and has everyone sit on fallen logs and rocks. You arrange yourself carefully, finding a comfortable position where you can rest but remain alert. When you were anxious this morning, she begins, her voice blending with the forest sounds. Where were you physically present? Everyone is quiet. The birds seem louder in this silence, almost as if they're listening too. Then one woman speaks. I was trapped in my head, thinking about all the bad things that could happen. Sarah nods, not with sympathy, but with recognition. And were any of those bad things actually happening in this moment? The woman shakes her head. No, they were all in my mind, in the future. Sarah looks at all of you. This is what anxiety does. It removes you from the present moment and throws you into imaginary futures. The present moment is always available to you. Right now, in this exact moment, you are safe. The anxiety is just a thought happening in a mind that is safe. She stands and continues the walk, and you follow. But something has shifted within you. You start noticing how much your mind actually leaves the present moment, how much of your attention is spent in worry about things that aren't happening. You feel the ground under your feet, slightly damp from yesterday's rain. You hear birds singing, their calls echoing through the trees. You smell the forest, that rich, loamy scent of decomposition and growth happening simultaneously. And in these moments of genuine presence, you notice something remarkable. The anxiety is quieter. It's still there, like a radio playing softly in another room. But it's not as commanding when you're actually attending to what's real right now, rather than what your imagination is creating. You realize something important. The anxiety doesn't actually thrive in reality. It thrives in the gap between what's happening and what you're thinking about. Fill that gap with present moment awareness, and suddenly, anxiety has nowhere to take hold. The path widens, and you walk beside Sarah as the forest opens to a small clearing. She points out a dead tree covered in moss and climbing vines. Look at this, she says. We might think of this as destruction, decay, the end. But the forest sees this as opportunity. Everything in nature uses what passes away as nourishment for what comes next. When you let an anxious thought pass away without fighting it, you're doing the same thing. You're letting it nourish your growth toward freedom. By the time the group returns to the center, nearly an hour and a half has passed, and you feel something you haven't felt in months. Genuinely calmer, not fixed, not transformed completely, but there's a lightness to your body that wasn't there this morning. Your jaw, which has been clenched so tightly for so long you'd forgotten it was clenched, has softened. Your breathing feels deeper. Your shoulders, those faithful barometers of your anxiety, have dropped away from your ears. Sarah has everyone sit in the meditation room once more for a final session before departure. The light coming through the windows is golden now, that particular quality of late afternoon that makes everything feel somehow sacred. She explains what you've been learning throughout the day, and you're astonished by how much has shifted in just these few hours. Anxiety is not your enemy, she says firmly. It's information. It's your mind trying to protect you, but it's doing it in a way that creates suffering because it's based on false beliefs about danger that isn't actually present. The Buddha taught that we suffer not because bad things happen, but because we believe thoughts without examining them closely. We take the mind storytelling as truth. We identify with anxiety and say, I am anxious, instead of anxiety is present. And we spend all our attention in imaginary futures instead of in the only moment where we can actually live and actually choose. Now, she guides one final meditation, this one combining everything you've learned. You sit and notice your breath. You allow thoughts to arise. You don't resist the anxiety when it surfaces, but you also don't follow it. You just notice it the way you might notice clouds passing across the sky. You're the sky, not the clouds. Sarah's voice walks you through the practice with gentle reminders and timing, and by the end, something feels different in your body's baseline. The alarm system hasn't been turned off, but it's been recalibrated. It's no longer screaming about every shadow. She offers each of you a small card with a simple practice written on it, and you take it with gratitude. When anxiety arises, it says, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. Is there actual danger here right now, or only the thought of potential danger? If I stop fighting this feeling and allow it to be here, what happens? What is one small thing I can actually do right now in this moment that actually matters to me? You read the card and feel something settle deep in your chest. These are questions you can ask. This is something you can actually do. These are tools, and they're yours to keep. As you prepare to leave late in the afternoon, Sarah walks you to your car. You feel her presence beside you, not intrusive, just there. She thanks you for coming and reminds you that what you learned today is available to you anytime, anywhere. The anxiety might return, she says, and you appreciate her honesty. But you now know something fundamental about its nature. You know it's impermanent. You know it lives in your mind's narratives rather than in actual reality. You know you have the capacity to notice it without being completely captured by it. And you know that the present moment, this one, right now, is always available as a refuge. Always. As you drive back toward the city, the highway stretching before you like a promise, you're surprised to notice that while the familiar anxiety surfaces now and then, it doesn't have the same grip it had this morning. It rises up, you feel it, you remember the teachings, and it passes. You think about the stone and its journey of transformation. You think about impermanence, about clouds moving through the sky. You think about the present moment, about your feet on the car's pedals, about your hands on the wheel, about the actual real of this drive rather than the imagined realities your mind keeps trying so desperately to create. You think about Sarah's words about being the sky rather than the clouds. By the time you reach home and pull into your familiar driveway, you don't have the sense that you're cured, that this one day has somehow fixed everything permanently and completely. But you have something profoundly different now. You have the beginning of real understanding about anxiety and how your mind works. And perhaps most importantly, you have the knowledge that change is genuinely possible, that nothing is as fixed and solid as it seems. The anxiety didn't vanish completely, but something shifted inside you. And that shift, that small but unmistakable shift, is everything. It's the beginning. That night, after returning home, you find yourself doing something unexpected. You sit on your couch with the wooden bracelet Sarah gave you wound around your wrist, and instead of opening your laptop or turning on the television, you simply breathe. 3 conscious breaths, just like she suggested. Your mind quiets slightly, not completely but noticeably. The shift is small enough that you might have missed it a month ago, but now you feel it like a beacon in the darkness. You sleep better than you have in months, and when you wake, the familiar weight of anxiety is there, waiting, but it's different somehow. It's present without owning you. By the next evening, you find yourself scrolling through the meditation center's website, looking for more sessions, and you're shocked to discover they offer multi-day retreats. The description reads, intensive Buddhist teachings on the nature of suffering and how to work skillfully with difficult emotions. Your finger hovers over the registration button for a long time before you click it. You're afraid. Of course you are. But underneath the fear is something stronger, the memory of clarity. The memory of that moment in the forest when you actually felt the anxiety lose its grip, when you noticed a spider web and it genuinely reached you because you were present. That feeling is worth driving 2 hours for again. You sign up for a 3-day retreat starting the following Saturday. When you arrive at the center this time, it feels different, familiar. Sarah greets you at the door with a slight smile of recognition, as if she knew you would come back, as if she was waiting for you. Welcome back, she says, and those 2 words hold more meaning than they should. The center has more people this time, perhaps 20 of you, all seated in the meditation hall, all presumably here for the same reason, to learn how to work with your own minds, how to stop suffering unnecessarily from your own thoughts and reactions. Sarah begins by asking who is new and who has practiced here before. A handful of hands go up, including yours, and she nods with acknowledgement. Those of you returning, she says, already understand that awareness matters, that how we relate to our experience is as important as what we experience. Today, we're going to deepen that understanding in very specific ways. She pauses and lets her gaze move around the circle. Today we begin by eating together mindfully. And while we eat, I want you to notice something very specific about how your mind works when you encounter food. The noon meal arrives and everyone is ushered into a bright dining room where simple food has been prepared. Rice, steamed vegetables, miso soup, fresh fruit. But before anyone eats, Sarah stands and explains what you're going to do. Most of us eat without actually eating, she says. We think about other things. We eat too quickly. We barely taste our food. We're physically present but mentally absent. But the Buddha taught that mindfulness, full presence with what is the path to freedom from suffering. So we're going to eat this meal together, and we're going to actually be here while we do it. She walks slowly through the dining room, passing each seated person. She demonstrates how to hold the chopsticks, how to move deliberately and slowly, how to actually look at the food before putting it in your mouth. Most of us, she continues, have experienced eating something delicious while distracted, and we reach the end of our plate having barely tasted it. The pleasure was there the entire time, but we weren't present enough to experience it. This is our life. We miss it because we're not here. She talks about where the food came from, how much work and how many people contributed to this moment. The farmers, the harvesters, the people who transported it, the cooks who prepared it. In this one meal, she says, the entire world is represented. The sun, the rain, the soil, the hands of every person who touched this food. If any single factor in this vast web had been different, if it had rained the wrong amount, if one person had called in sick that day, if the road had been blocked, you would not have this meal before you right now. Everything in existence is interconnected. And now it's becoming your body. It's nourishing you. This is remarkable when you actually pay attention to it. She stands at the front of the room, and everyone sits in their places, bowls before them, food waiting. Before we eat, Sarah says, I want to point out something about your nervous system. When you eat mindfully, when you slow down and actually taste and experience your food, your parasympathetic nervous system activates. This is the rest and digest response, not the fight or flight response. Anxiety happens in the fight or flight state. It's very hard to maintain intense anxiety while you're genuinely relaxed and present. So this meal is not just nourishment for your body, it's direct nervous system regulation. This is medicine. Everyone eats in silence, and you follow the guidance carefully. You place a small portion of rice in your mouth. You actually taste it instead of just swallowing. The rice is warm and slightly sweet, with a subtle, nutty flavor you've never noticed before. You chew slowly, feeling the texture break down between your teeth. The miso soup is salty and carries umami, warmth spreading through your mouth and down your throat. The vegetables have distinct flavors and textures that you've never really appreciated before when eating on autopilot. The broccoli slightly sweet and fibrous, the carrot crisp and earthy, the zucchini soft and mild. You notice yourself tensing slightly as your mind wants to wander to the afternoon ahead, to the teaching you're about to receive. But you gently bring your attention back to the present sensation, the taste, the texture, the temperature. As you eat, something unexpected happens. Your anxiety quiets. Not because you're distracted or because something magical occurred, but because you're actually present. When your complete attention is occupied with the actual sensory experience of this moment, with taste and texture and temperature and the subtle pleasure of warm food on your tongue, there simply isn't space in your awareness for your mind to create catastrophes about the future. You can't worry about next week and genuinely taste this miso soup at the same time. One person even approaches you without realizing you're done eating. You're so completely engaged with your food that they almost interrupt before noticing you're still there, conscious in a way they haven't seen you be before. This is what Sarah meant about the teachings being everywhere. It's not just in formal meditation, it's in eating, it's in breathing, it's in walking, it's in every moment that you choose to actually be present for. The simple act of eating becomes a complete training ground for presence, for nervous system regulation, for freedom from the constant mental chatter that generates anxiety. By the time the meal ends, nearly 70 minutes have passed, much longer than a typical meal, and you feel noticeably calmer than you have since waking this morning. Your shoulders have dropped, your breathing is slower and fuller. Your mind, which has been running at high speed like a hamster on a wheel, has actually slowed down. Everyone rises and carries their bowls to a washing station, each person cleaning their own dishes mindfully, with attention, treating this simple task as part of the practice, rather than as an interruption to it. You're beginning to understand that the practice isn't separate from life. It is life when you're actually present for it. After lunch, Sarah gathers everyone in the main teaching room. The windows are open, and a gentle breeze carries the sound of birds singing outside. She sits cross-legged on a low platform, and everyone arranges themselves in a circle around her. She holds up 2 arrows, or rather she mimes holding 2 arrows, making the gesture clear and deliberate. The Buddha taught something called the second arrow, she begins, and her voice carries a particular intensity, as if she's about to reveal something precious and important. This is one of the most powerful teachings for working with suffering and anxiety. Listen carefully, because this will change how you understand your own pain, and it might literally transform your life. She lets that statement sit for a moment, letting everyone absorb the promise of it. She sets down her imaginary arrows and folds her hands. Imagine you get shot with an arrow. You're injured. You feel pain. That's the first arrow. That's the direct experience of being hurt. That's life happening. You get criticized at work, your relationship ends, you lose something you value, you experience physical pain, someone betrays your trust, your health falters. That's the first arrow. That's unavoidable. That's part of being human in a body, in a world with other people. She pauses and makes direct eye contact with different people around the circle, connecting personally. But then something happens that the Buddha identified as the actual source of most of our suffering. After the first arrow hits, we shoot ourselves with a second arrow. We add our reaction to the initial pain. We think, this shouldn't be happening, or I can't handle this, or this means I'm a failure, or why me? This is unfair. Why is the universe doing this to me? Why? We resist the pain furiously. We judge it as wrong. We create an entire narrative around it, about what it means about us, our lives, our worth. That second arrow is entirely optional. It's self-inflicted, and it causes far more suffering than the original injury. She picks up a piece of paper and a marker and begins to draw while she talks, the movement deliberate and clear. She draws a simple stick figure and draws one arrow going through it horizontally. Then she draws a second arrow, this time coming from inside the figure, piercing outward like the person is attacking themselves from within. See, the first arrow comes from outside. It comes from circumstances, from other people, from the world. The second arrow comes from inside. It's self-generated. It's the story you tell yourself about the first arrow. And the second arrow always causes more damage, because you're not just experiencing the original pain, you're fighting it, resisting it, adding layers of judgment and fear on top of it. A woman in the back raises her hand, her face showing clear recognition. So you're saying that if I could somehow accept the first arrow without resisting it, the suffering would be less? Sarah nods vigorously, setting down her marker. Exactly. You would still feel pain. You would still feel grief or disappointment or physical sensation or anxiety. But you wouldn't have all the additional suffering created by, I shouldn't feel this, or this is wrong, or something is broken about me for feeling this way, or why is this happening to me? You would just feel what's actually there without the extra layer. You would feel hurt instead of hurt plus shame. You would feel grief instead of grief plus guilt. You would feel disappointment instead of disappointment plus self-blame. Sarah stands and walks slowly around the circle, her movement deliberate and thoughtful. Let me give you something very specific. You get anxious. That's the first arrow. Your body responds to a thought about the future by releasing stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. You feel your heart racing, your chest tight, your mind spinning in circles. That's uncomfortable. That's unpleasant. That's the first arrow, and it's real. But then what most anxious people do, what you've probably done many times, is this. You get anxious about your anxiety. You think, oh no, I'm getting anxious again. This is bad. I can't handle this. What if it gets worse? What if I lose control? What if this is a heart attack? That's the second arrow. That's the self-inflicted suffering on top of the natural discomfort of anxiety itself. And that second arrow is what creates the actual panic attack. The first arrow is uncomfortable. The second arrow is terrifying. The first arrow is a wave. The second arrow is drowning. She sits back down on the platform, and everyone leans slightly forward, engaged completely. The teaching isn't that you can avoid the first arrow. You cannot. You can try all you want, but you cannot. Life sends arrows. People are difficult sometimes. Circumstances are uncertain. Your body experiences pain and discomfort and illness and aging. You get disappointed. You get rejected. That's just reality. That's just what it means to be alive. But the second arrow, the arrow you shoot at yourself from inside, that is completely, absolutely, 100% up to you. You can choose not to shoot it. You can choose to notice the first arrow. Acknowledge that it's there. Accept that this is what's happening right now, and not add your resistance and judgment and fear-based narrative on top of it. A man with grey hair speaks up, his voice thoughtful. But isn't it natural to resist pain? Isn't that a survival mechanism? Sarah smiles at him kindly, and you can see real warmth in her expression. It is natural. Your brain absolutely has evolved to protect you, to notice threats, to resist danger. This is excellent, crucial even, for dealing with real immediate threats. If there's an actual lion running toward you, yes, resistance is appropriate and necessary. Run, fight, do whatever it takes to survive. But here's what most of us don't realize. Most of our anxiety comes from perceived threats that aren't actually happening right now. They're thoughts about the future. And those perceived threats don't require resistance in the same way. They require something different. They require observation. They require a different kind of response. She stands again and demonstrates physically. If a lion is running toward you right now, yes, activation is appropriate. Fight or flight. Run. Protect yourself. Do whatever it takes. But if you're lying in bed at 3 a.m. thinking about a presentation you have to give next week, what is resistance actually doing? It's not making you a better presenter. It's not solving the actual problem. It's just creating suffering on top of your nervousness. Fighting your anxiety doesn't make the presentation go better. It just creates suffering on top of your nervousness while making you exhausted and depleted. So what's the alternative? The alternative is this. She takes a deep breath and demonstrates a different posture, shoulders relaxed, face calm. You notice the first arrow. You say to yourself, okay, anxiety is present right now. I'm feeling nervous and worried. My body is activated. My mind is spinning. This is what's happening. You don't fight it. You don't judge it as wrong or bad. You don't tell yourself you shouldn't be feeling this. You just observe it. You make space for it. And when you do that, when you stop shooting the second arrow of resistance and judgment and catastrophic narratives, something remarkable happens. The first arrow is still there. You're still experiencing the anxiety, but it's manageable, it's workable. It's workable because you're not fighting it. It's just a sensation and a thought, not proof of anything, not a prophecy about the future, not confirmation that something is wrong with you. It's just a pattern your brain is running. She continues the teaching, going into depth about how the second arrow manifests in different situations throughout life. She talks about how people respond to grief by adding, I shouldn't be sad like this. I'm weak. I should be over it by now, which creates depression on top of grief. She talks about how people respond to physical pain by tensing up and resisting it, which actually creates more pain because of the muscular tension. She talks about how, when people make mistakes, they often add shame and vicious self-criticism on top of the simple fact of the mistake, making it infinitely worse and often making them less likely to recover and learn. She demonstrates each one, showing how the second arrow always compounds the original suffering. The key, she says near the end of this extended teaching, is learning to distinguish between the first arrow and the second arrow in your own experience. Can you feel the difference? Can you feel the difference between the natural sensation of anxiety and your judgment about that anxiety? Can you notice when you're resisting something that's actually here versus when you're responding to something that's actually an immediate threat? She guides you through a practice where you deliberately bring to mind something moderately difficult, the same work situation you thought about at the first session, the presentation you have to give. And this time, instead of following the anxiety into catastrophe like you usually do, you try to notice both what's happening in your body and your mind's tendency to layer judgment on top of it. When anxiety arises, that familiar sensation of dread and worry and what-ifs, you practice simply observing it without the inner commentary, without the self-judgment, without the stories. You feel it without fighting it. The difference is striking. The anxiety is still there. You're still experiencing the nervousness, but it's smaller somehow, less commanding, less like a tsunami overwhelming you, and more like a wave you can actually stand in and feel without being destroyed by it. After the teaching, Sarah suggests everyone take a walk in the garden to integrate the learning. You file out into the afternoon sunlight, and she leads you through a path bordered by flowering bushes and small trees, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. The garden is larger than you remembered, or perhaps you're just noticing it more clearly this time because you're more present. She stops at a small pond where water flows from a fountain, creating gentle ripples that expand outward and then fade as new ripples form. I want to teach you something very specific about anxiety, she says. and everyone gathers around the water's edge. In Buddhism, we teach about something called dependent origination. This is the teaching that everything arises in dependence on multiple conditions and causes. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything that exists does so only because of a web of conditions. And this is especially true of anxiety. Anxiety isn't random. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. She gestures toward the water. Anxiety is, at its root, the mind trying to predict the future. Your mind thinks that if it can imagine every possible bad thing that could happen, then maybe it can prevent it from happening. Your mind's logic is, if I worry enough, maybe I can control what happens. If I anticipate all the problems, maybe I can avoid them. This is the anxious mind's logic, and on the surface it makes sense. It feels protective, it feels like preparation. But here's the question: does worrying about a presentation actually make the presentation go better? Everyone shakes their heads, and she nods slowly. No, she continues. In fact, it makes it worse because you're tired from not sleeping. Your mind is fragmented from all the worry. Your nervous system is already stressed and activated before you even get there. Your energy is depleted. Your attention is scattered. So worrying about the future doesn't actually protect you or improve the outcome. It actually sabotages you. But your brain doesn't know this. Your brain thinks anxiety is useful because your brain evolved in a world where worrying sometimes did help you survive immediate threats. But now, we live in a world where most of our anxiety is about thoughts, about possibilities, about things that aren't actually happening right now. She picks up a stone from the garden path, holding it so everyone can see it, and then slowly drops it into the pond. Ripples form in perfect circles, expanding outward, traveling toward the edges, eventually fading. She drops another stone near the first, and then another, and the ripples overlap and interact in increasingly complex patterns, interfering with each other, creating unpredictable waves. Your mind does this with worry, she explains. You start with one anxious thought. Let's say you think about something that might go wrong at work. That's the first stone. Your mind immediately generates ripples of consequence. If that bad thing happens, then this would follow, and then this person would respond this way, and then this would happen, and then this, and each ripple creates more ripples until the surface of your mind is completely disturbed and chaotic. You're not just thinking about one problem anymore. You're thinking about cascading consequences, compound disasters, interconnected catastrophes. She pauses and points to the pond. But here's what's crucial to understand. Look at what's actually there. When I stop dropping stones, what happens? Everyone watches. As the stones settle and no new ones are dropped, the pond gradually becomes still again. The water becomes still. The ripples dissipate. The pond returns to its natural calm state. This isn't because the pond changed. It's because you stopped disturbing it. Your mind is exactly like this water. Your anxiety, your worry, your racing thoughts, these create disturbance. Your mind's natural state is actually peaceful, clear, capable. But when you keep generating more anxious thoughts, when you keep dropping more stones into your mental space, you keep generating more disturbance. But if you stop deliberately generating more anxious thoughts, if you practice not following the anxious narrative, if you practice not elaborating on the scary story, the mind actually returns to a more natural, calm state on its own. A woman raises her hand. But how do you stop generating anxious thoughts? Can willpower alone do it? Sarah nods thoughtfully. That's the most important question anyone could ask. And the answer is subtle and important. You can't stop thoughts from arising by force of will. If you try to suppress thoughts through willpower, what actually happens? You tense up, you create resistance, you create a second arrow, and that resistance often creates more anxiety, not less, because you're now fighting your own mind. It's exhausting. She walks slowly along the garden path, and everyone follows, entering a section with flowering plants and small sculptures. But you can change your relationship with the thoughts. You can practice not following them like a dog chasing a stick. You can practice not elaborating on them, not believing them completely, not treating them as prophecy. And here's what's remarkable. As you practice this, as you stop rewarding anxious thoughts with your complete attention and belief, your brain actually starts generating fewer anxious thoughts naturally. Your brain is learning. Your brain learns that anxious thoughts don't lead to safety or problem solving. They lead nowhere. So gradually, your brain generates fewer of them. She stops by a flowering bush and she traces her finger along a bloom that's just opening. Notice this flower. It's alive right now. It's blooming. But if you come back here next week, this specific flower will have faded. It will have served its purpose. A new flower will have bloomed in its place. This is impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. She turns to face the group directly. Your anxiety isn't different from this flower. It's impermanent. It will change. It will pass. And when you really know this experientially, not just as an intellectual idea, it changes everything about how you relate to anxiety. You don't need to make anxiety go away because you know it will go away naturally. It's impermanent. The only thing you need to actually do is not feed it. You don't need to fight it or resist it or judge it. You just need to not feed it with your second arrow of resistance and judgment and catastrophic narratives. Stop dropping stones into the water, and the water becomes still. She continues walking, pointing out different plants and how they've adapted to their environment, how nothing exists in isolation, but everything depends on sun, water, soil, insects, other plants. She talks about dependent origination again in this context, how each plant exists only because of a web of conditions. This is what we call dependent origination, she explains. The teaching that all phenomena arise in dependence on conditions. Your anxiety isn't different. It arises in dependence on conditions. If you change those conditions, the anxiety changes. If you practice presence instead of worry, if you practice observing thoughts instead of following them, if you practice accepting what is instead of fighting reality, you change the conditions that support anxiety. And when the conditions change, anxiety naturally decreases. By the time the group returns from the garden walk, you feel something fundamental shifting in how you conceptualize your anxiety. It's not an enemy to defeat. It's not a permanent state that defines you. It's not even really the problem. The first arrow, the anxiety itself, that's just a sensation and a thought. The second arrow, your resistance and judgment and elaborate narratives, that's where the real suffering lives. That's what you can actually work with. That's what is genuinely in your power to change. Back at the meditation hall, Sarah gathers everyone for an evening meditation session. The light outside the windows is golden and soft. That particular quality of late afternoon sunlight that makes everything feel somehow sacred and timeless. Inside, the hall is quieter than it was during earlier sessions, as if everyone's practicing throughout the day has created a deeper, more settled atmosphere. She explains that tonight's practice will specifically focus on observing anxious thoughts without being captured by them, without believing them completely, without following them down the familiar rabbit hole. She wants you to practice seeing thoughts, as mental events, rather than as truth or commands or prophecy about what will happen. You settle onto your cushion, adjusting your posture until you find that balance between alertness and comfort, and she guides everyone through the initial settling practice. Noticing breath, letting attention rest on the sensation of breathing. Noticing your body, the points of contact with the floor and cushion. Bringing full attention to this moment, this place, this actual reality you're sitting in right now. And then she introduces the specific investigation. If you experience anxiety during this practice, she says, her voice soft but clear enough that everyone can hear, which many of you might, and that's perfectly okay. That's not a failure, that's actually an opportunity. That's exactly what we want to observe. Notice the anxious thought arising in your awareness. Notice what it's telling you, what story it's creating. Notice the sensation in your body that accompanies it. Then ask yourself these questions. Is this actually true right now, in this moment? Am I in actual danger right now, in this moment? Or is this thought about something that might happen in the future? She pauses and lets that sink in deeply. Most anxious thoughts are about things that aren't happening right now. They're about the future, about possibilities, about what-ifs and hypotheticals. So in this moment, you can actually check, is there actual danger here now? Usually the answer is no. You're sitting safely in a meditation hall. You're supported by this community. You're okay right now. This moment is okay. You can use the safety and okayness of this moment to interrupt the anxious narrative. She guides the meditation for perhaps 50 minutes, and you practice exactly what she suggested. When anxious thoughts do arise, and they do multiple times, because that's what minds do, thoughts about work, about whether you're doing the practice correctly, about your health, about what people think of you, about whether this way or a treat is actually helping or just wasting your time and money. You notice them arising like characters appearing on a stage. You observe the thought without immediately identifying with it or believing it as absolute truth. You ask yourself the question she suggested. Is this thought actually true? Is there danger in this present moment? Or is this thought speculating about the future? Most of the time you realize the answer is clear. The thought is about tomorrow's work situation, or next month's health concern, or what your boss might think of you, not about now. The thought is speculative, not factual. It's a possibility, not an actuality. And as you keep practicing this distinction, as you keep noticing thoughts without grabbing onto them, something remarkable happens. The thoughts themselves don't disappear, but they become quieter. They lose their commanding power over you. They become less solid and compelling. You're able to watch them like someone watching clouds pass across the sky. Interesting to notice perhaps, but not controlling your attention, not demanding your belief, not forcing you to act on them. Your breathing continues steady and calm beneath all the mental activity. Your body remains relaxed on the cushion. You're present while thoughts do what thoughts do, and you're not captured by them. By the time the meditation ends with the gentle sound of the bell ringing 3 times, you feel genuinely calm in your body. Your shoulders have dropped. Your jaw has unclenched. The baseline of your nervous system has shifted. Not because the anxious thoughts have disappeared, some are still there, but because you've stopped fighting them and you've stopped believing them completely. You've created some space between yourself and your thoughts. This is the work. This is what freedom actually looks like, not the absence of difficult thoughts, which might not be possible, but the capacity to observe them without being controlled by them, without being captured by them, without having to act on them. As everyone rises slowly from their cushions and begins to move gently toward the dining hall for dinner, you touch the wooden bracelet on your wrist, the one Sarah gave you at your first visit, and remember her words about being the sky rather than the clouds. You're beginning to understand deeply that you've been the sky all along. You just forgot for a while. And remembering is transforming everything. Dinner is served in the same mindful way as every other meal at the center, but tonight feels different. Everyone moves more slowly, speaks more softly, and there's a quality of deepened presence that wasn't as noticeable before. Perhaps the collective meditation created this, or perhaps everyone here is beginning to understand that this retreat isn't just about learning techniques to manage anxiety. It's about completely reimagining who you are and how you relate to your own mind. After dinner, Sarah leads everyone to a section of the building you haven't seen before. It's a small library, lined with shelves of books, but unlike any library you've ever been in. The books here seem chosen not for quantity, but for quality, and the space itself feels sacred somehow, illuminated by afternoon light coming through tall windows, warm wood everywhere, comfortable chairs positioned near the windows. "I want to teach you about the antidote to fear," Sarah begins, as everyone settles into chairs arranged in a semicircle. "And I want to do it in this space because books represent something essential. They represent accumulated human wisdom across time. They represent the fact that every problem you're facing, every struggle with anxiety you're having, has been faced before. You are not the first person to feel this way. You are not broken or uniquely flawed. You are part of a continuum of human experience stretching back through history." She walks slowly along the shelves, running her fingers across the spines of various books. In Buddhism, we teach that there are several fundamental causes of all suffering, and one of the most important is a quality called ignorance. But ignorance doesn't mean stupidity. It means not knowing how things actually work. It means operating from false beliefs about reality. It means not understanding how your mind creates suffering for you. Fear, specifically, arises from a particular kind of ignorance. It arises from not understanding impermanence. She looks directly at you and several others, her gaze steady and kind, and ignorance can be remedied. This is the whole point of these teachings. If suffering comes from not knowing how things actually work, then suffering can end through coming to know how things actually work. This is not pessimistic. This is profoundly optimistic because it means your suffering isn't permanent or unchangeable. It's based on misunderstanding, and misunderstandings can be corrected. She pulls a book down and opens it carefully. The pages yellowed with age. Fear is fundamentally about attachment. You're afraid you'll lose something you value. You're afraid something bad will happen that you can't control. You're afraid of the future being different from how you want it to be. All of that comes from not really understanding impermanence. If you truly deeply understood that everything changes, that nothing stays the same, that loss is inevitable, that surprise is inevitable, that you can't ultimately control the external world, would you still be so terrified? She closes the book and looks at everyone directly. Think about it. Most of our fear is about losing things that we already know we will eventually lose anyway. You're afraid your partner will leave you, but you also know that either they will leave or you will die and be separated from them anyway. You're afraid your health will fail, but your health will inevitably fail at some point. That's just the nature of having a body. You're afraid you'll lose your job, but no job lasts forever. That's not how reality works. So the only thing you're actually afraid of is that loss will happen, when loss is already guaranteed. You're afraid of the inevitable. And when you see clearly that what you're afraid of is inevitable, something shifts. She sits down in a comfortable chair and gestures for everyone to do the same. The antidote to fear isn't positive thinking, though that can help. The antidote isn't removing all risk from your life, because that's impossible. The antidote is coming to direct understanding of how things actually work. This is called wisdom. And wisdom is cultivated through learning, through hearing teachings, through contemplating them, and through direct experience. She picks up several books from a table beside her, her hands moving gently across their spines. These books represent centuries of accumulated human wisdom about anxiety, fear, suffering, and how to transform them. Not my wisdom. Not any single person's wisdom. The wisdom of thousands of practitioners across thousands of years, all of whom struggled exactly as you're struggling. All of whom found that their fears were based on misunderstanding reality. All of whom discovered that when the misunderstanding was corrected, the fear dissolved. She stands and walks to a window, holding one book up to the light. When I read these teachings from teachers who lived 1,000 years ago, I'm struck by how universal human anxiety is. They describe panic attacks that sound exactly like what people experience now. They describe generalized worry. They describe perfectionism and self-criticism. They describe difficulty, sleeping from racing thoughts. Everything you're experiencing, they experienced. And everything they discovered, about how to work with it, we can learn from them. This is the power of wisdom traditions. They preserve knowledge about the human mind and how to train it, how to liberate it from suffering. She opens one book and reads a passage silently, then looks up. There's a teaching called the 5 Remembrances in Buddhism. It goes like this: I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to sicken. There is no way to escape sickness. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions. Actions are the womb and source. Whatever I do, for good or for harm, to that I will fall heir. She closes the book gently. These aren't depressing statements designed to make you sad. These are radical acceptance statements. They're designed to help you accept reality as it actually is instead of pretending it's different. And when you truly accept these 5 remembrances, something astonishing happens to fear. Because most of what we're afraid of is already true. We're already aging. We're already subject to illness and death. We are already separated from the people we love because nothing lasts forever. We already face the consequences of our actions. The only thing that changes is whether we accept these facts or whether we spend our energy fighting them, denying them, and being terrified of them. A man in the group speaks up. But doesn't acceptance mean giving up? Like, if I accept I might fail, won't I stop trying? Sarah nods thoughtfully. That's a crucial question, and it points to a widespread misunderstanding. Acceptance and effort are not opposites. In fact, acceptance creates the conditions for effort to be effective. If you're constantly fighting against reality, your energy is scattered. You're partially engaged with solving the actual problem, and partially engaged with denying that the problem exists. But when you accept reality exactly as it is right now, all your energy becomes available for intelligent response. You can work much more effectively when you're not simultaneously denying the situation. She stands and moves to the window, looking out at the grounds outside. Think of a martial artist. A good martial artist doesn't fight force with force. They accept the incoming force and redirect it. They work with reality rather than against it. This is what wisdom looks like. This is what acceptance actually means. It means meeting reality directly and responding intelligently rather than fantasizing about different reality or denying what's actually happening. Everyone sits quietly with this for a while, and you feel something shifting in how you understand your own fear. Your anxiety about the future isn't really about the future. It's about refusing to accept that you can't control the future. It's about insisting reality should be different than it is. It's about fighting against uncertainty, rather than acknowledging that uncertainty is built into existence. As afternoon light shifts subtly through the library windows, Sarah suggests everyone stand and prepare for the next practice. The teaching in the library has prepared the ground, and now it's time to work with specific emotions directly. Moving to the main practice space, Sarah explains that you'll now practice loving-kindness meditation specifically focused on transforming anxiety. This practice is called metta in Pali, which translates roughly as loving-kindness, she says, as everyone settles onto cushions. And before you get uncomfortable about the word loving, let me be clear. This isn't about suddenly feeling warm and fuzzy toward yourself or others. It's not about denying anger or frustration. It's about cultivating a quality of fundamental care and well-wishing toward yourself and other beings. And crucially, it's about releasing the hostility you're directing toward yourself. She walks through the practice slowly. We're going to start with loving kindness directed toward yourself. And for many of you, especially those dealing with anxiety, this will actually feel more challenging than directing loving kindness toward others. Because most anxious people are deeply hostile toward themselves. You criticize yourself, you judge yourself, you tell yourself you should be different than you are. This is a form of hostility. This is shooting the second arrow at yourself constantly. She guides everyone into a comfortable seated position and begins the practice. Bring to mind an image of yourself, perhaps as you were as a child, or just as you are now, and begin to offer yourself these phrases. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. Repeat these phrases slowly, letting them sink in, and notice what arises. You follow her guidance, bringing to mind an image of yourself. The phrases feel awkward at first, almost embarrassing. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. You can feel resistance in your chest, a tightness, an unwillingness to give yourself this care. And Sarah seems to anticipate this. Notice if resistance arises, she says. Notice if it feels wrong to offer yourself loving kindness. Notice if you have a voice telling you that you don't deserve this care, that you should be more self-critical, that you're not good enough for this kindness. Don't fight that voice. Simply notice it. This voice is probably the voice that generates much of your anxiety. This is the internal critic that constantly tells you you're not enough, that you should be different, that something is wrong with you. This practice is asking you to stand up to that voice without being hostile toward it. You can acknowledge its presence and choose a different way of relating to yourself anyway. As you continue repeating the phrases, something begins to soften. The resistance doesn't disappear entirely, but you find yourself able to repeat, "May I be safe," with slightly more genuineness, slightly less edge. Your shoulders drop a little. There's a feeling almost of permission, as if you're allowing yourself something you've been denying yourself for years. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. With each phrase, the words land a little more deeply, a little more truly. After several minutes of this, Sarah guides you to extend the loving kindness to someone you care about, someone for whom it's easy to feel care and concern. You think of Sarah herself, actually, or at least what she represents to you: wisdom, clarity, compassion, and the phrases come much more easily, much more naturally. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. There's almost a warmth that comes with these words when directed at someone you care about. A genuineness, a sense of actually wishing them well. Then Sarah guides you to extend the loving kindness to someone neutral, someone you don't have particularly strong feelings about, perhaps a cashier at a store or someone you pass on the street. This is interesting. You realize you have very little actual feelings about this person, one way or another, which means you can offer the kindness without much resistance or complication. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Then, most challengingly, to someone who has caused you difficulty, someone toward whom you might naturally feel anger or resentment. Your initial impulse is to skip this step or to half-heartedly mouth the words. But Sarah's voice gently suggests that this step is especially important, that extending loving kindness, even toward difficult people, is paradoxically what liberates you from the suffering caused by anger and resentment. So you try. You think of someone at work who has been difficult, and you begin to repeat the phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. The words feel strange, inauthentic, almost like you're lying, but you continue anyway, and slowly something shifts. You're not suddenly feeling affectionate toward this person or approving of their behavior. You're simply acknowledging their basic humanity, their fundamental desire to be safe and happy and at ease, their struggle with their own conditioning and limitations, the same as you. And as you do this, you notice that the angry, hostile energy you've been holding toward them seems to lose some of its charge. Not all of it, not immediately, but noticeably. Then Sarah guides the practice toward its conclusion, her voice becoming softer, more expansive. And now, she says, Extend this loving kindness to all beings everywhere, all beings in this room, all beings in this city, all beings on this continent, all beings on this planet, all beings in all realms of existence. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. The expansion of awareness to include all beings creates a profound shift in your state. The anxiety that had seemed so personal, so specific to you, suddenly contextualizes itself as part of universal suffering, universal longing for safety and peace. Everyone around you and billions of other human beings and countless other creatures are all struggling with fear, all wishing for safety and peace, all deserving care and compassion. Someone sitting near you shifts slightly, and you realize they might be crying, moved by this expansion of compassion. Your anxiety isn't as special or unique or personal as it felt before. It's part of the shared human condition. And somehow this realization creates a kind of relief, a sense of not being alone in it, a sense of solidarity with everyone who struggles. The words, "May all beings be safe," continue repeating in your mind, and with them comes a sense that you're participating in something vast, something that connects you to the whole of existence. All the beings who have ever lived, and all those still to come, all of them struggling and hoping and fearing and loving in their own ways. After the loving kindness practice concludes with gentle bell rings, Sarah suggests that the evening is becoming beautiful and proposes a walk through the forest on the grounds. Nature has wisdom that books don't contain and that words can't quite capture, she explains as everyone files outside into the fading light. The forest surrounding the center is old growth, with towering trees that have stood for decades or more, creating a canopy so dense that the declining sunlight filters down in green-filtered shafts, creating an almost cathedral-like atmosphere. The air is cool and clean, and you can hear the sound of evening birds beginning their twilight songs. One of the most important teachings about anxiety is that anxiety is not the problem. Sarah begins as you walk slowly along a trail, the earth soft and spongy beneath your feet, composed of generations of fallen needles and decaying leaves, the air cool and rich with the smell of soil and vegetation and deep, ancient growing things. Anxiety is information. It's your nervous system responding to perceived threat. It's actually your body trying to protect you. The problem is that your nervous system is overly sensitized. It's perceiving threats that aren't actually there. It's treating thoughts about the future as if they're actually present danger. And the reason for this is that your nervous system hasn't learned that certain types of uncertainty aren't actually dangerous. She pauses to allow this to settle. Your nervous system is doing its job. The problem is that its job is based on programs that were useful when you faced immediate physical threats from predators or competitors. But now the threats are mostly conceptual. They're thoughts about social rejection, thoughts about failure, thoughts about not being good enough. These are not actual present moment threats, and yet your body is releasing stress hormones as if a lion was chasing you. She pauses beside a tree that's clearly been damaged at some point, a large branch broken off, but the tree has continued to live and grow around the wound, incorporating the damage into its structure. Look at this tree. It survived damage. It adapted. It didn't resist the reality of the breaking branch by pretending it didn't happen. It incorporated it and continued to grow. This is what your nervous system needs to do with uncertainty and change and the unpredictability of life. It needs to learn that uncertainty isn't danger. It needs to learn that thoughts about bad futures aren't proof that bad futures will happen. It needs to learn that it can survive what it's afraid of. You continue walking deeper into the forest, and Sarah points out various natural phenomena. She shows you a fallen tree completely covered in moss and new growth, decomposing back into the forest, feeding new life. You kneel and look closely at the intricate ecosystem existing on this once living thing. Fungi, insects, small plants, all collaborating in the process of returning the tree to soil. This is impermanence, she says. This is change. This is the reality that anxious people are usually resisting. The tree fell. That's what happens to trees eventually. They fall. And then they become something else. They become habitat and nutrition for countless other organisms. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is truly lost. It simply transforms. She runs her hand gently along the soft, decomposing wood. Look at your anxiety from this perspective. You have an anxious thought. It's like a tree falling. It happens because the conditions support it happening. And if you don't resist it, if you don't fight it, it gradually decomposes. It feeds something else. It becomes part of the ecosystem of your mind, rather than a foreign invader that shouldn't be there. But most people can't do this because they're too busy fighting, too busy saying this shouldn't be happening, this is wrong, this is bad. And that resistance keeps the anxiety alive. She shows you a spider web covered in evening dew, each droplet catching what remains of the daylight like tiny jewels. Spiders are builders, she says. They build intricate webs every single day, sometimes multiple times per day if their web gets destroyed. They don't seem to suffer existential crisis about how their web will inevitably be damaged or destroyed. They don't lie awake at night, anxious about whether they'll be able to build a good web again. They just build it again. This is resilience. This is what your nervous system can learn. When something goes wrong, you rebuild. You don't get stuck in catastrophic thinking about the nature of failure. You simply engage with what is and continue. This is not resignation. This is not passive acceptance. This is active, intelligent engagement with the reality of how life actually works. Hey, as you walk further along the trail, the sunlight has diminished to the point where Sarah suggests everyone sit on a large flat rock beside a small stream and rest for a moment. The sound of water flowing is peaceful, and everyone sits quietly, listening to the natural soundscape, feeling the approaching evening, smelling the forest. A cool breeze passes through, and you can hear the distant call of a night bird preparing for its evening activities. Sarah sits on a separate rock, also quiet for a moment, and you get the sense she's listening to something beyond the ordinary sounds, perhaps the wisdom of this place, the accumulated peace of centuries of trees and water and stone. I want to tell you a story, she finally says after several minutes of silence. It's an old Buddhist story, and it's called The Story of the Anxious Farmer, and I want to tell it here, beside this stream, because the story is about learning to accept what is, rather than fighting against what cannot be changed. There was once a farmer in a small village who was so prone to worry that he became known throughout the region for his anxiety. Everyone called him the anxious farmer. He had a good farm, adequate land, and generally sufficient harvest to feed his family and to sell some surplus at market. By almost any objective measure, he was doing well. And yet he was perpetually stressed, perpetually worried, perpetually looking ahead to the next thing that could go wrong. No matter what happened, good weather or bad, good harvest or poor, he would find something to worry about. If the rains came, he worried they wouldn't stop and would flood his crops. If the drought came, he worried the drought would last and his crops would wither. If his harvest was good, he worried about storing it properly, or that prices would fall. If his harvest was poor, he worried about having enough to eat through the winter. His neighbors would see him walking his fields at dusk, shaking his head, talking to himself about the various catastrophes that might befall his crops and his family. They felt sorry for him, though there wasn't much they could do. Worry isn't contagious in a way that can be easily remedied. One day, a visiting monk came through the village and heard of the anxious farmer's reputation. The monk, being interested in human suffering and its causes, decided to visit him and spent an afternoon asking the farmer questions about his life and his worries. The anxious farmer replied, his voice carrying the weight of years of worry. I worry because so many things could go wrong. I worry because I'm not in control of the weather. I worry because I have a family to feed, and if something goes wrong with the crops, they will suffer. My responsibility is immense. I have to think about every possibility, every danger, every way things could fall apart. If I'm not vigilant, if I'm not constantly worrying and thinking about what could happen, then I'll be caught off guard and won't be able to respond. The monk sat with the farmer for a while in silence, understanding the weight of his concern, but also seeing the futility in his approach. Then the monk asked a simple, profound question. Tell me, in all the years you've been farming, how many of the things you worried about actually happened? The anxious farmer thought carefully, sitting down on a bench and counting in his mind through all the years of anxieties. Well, he said slowly, his voice quieter now. I suppose most of what I worried about didn't actually happen. I worried about locusts many years ago, and they never came. I worried about terrible floods several times, and they never happened. I worried about my children getting sick more times than I can count, and mostly they stayed healthy. I suppose, if I'm being honest, I've spent far more time worried about things that didn't happen than actually dealing with the few things that did happen. And for the few things that did happen, the monk continued gently, did your worry about them beforehand actually prevent them? The farmer's expression shifted, something dawning in his awareness. No, he admitted. My worry didn't prevent anything. When bad things happened, they happened, and I dealt with them. But I had already spent months or years worried about them beforehand, suffering in advance for something that might not even occur. The monk smiled gently. So your worry, he said, is like paying a debt twice. You pay once in advance with all the suffering of worry, and then you might pay again if the thing you feared actually happens. You're doubling your suffering. And for what? The worry doesn't prevent anything. It doesn't protect you. It just exhausts you. The anxious farmer realized the truth in this teaching. It hit him like a physical blow because he suddenly saw clearly what he'd been doing to himself and his family all these years. He understood that his worry was a habit, a way of thinking that had become so automatic, he believed it was protecting him, when in fact it was just making him miserable and exhausting him needlessly. The monk didn't offer him a new philosophy or tell him to simply stop worrying. Instead, he gave him a practice, a way to work with his mind. From that day forward, whenever he caught himself falling into the worry habit, the anxious farmer would ask himself two questions. Is this actually happening right now? Or am I suffering about something that might happen? And can my worry actually prevent this or change it? Usually the answer to the second question was no. And recognizing this, he could stop paying the debt twice. He could let himself experience one moment of life rather than two. The present moment of worry plus an imagined future suffering. Slowly, over time, his anxiety decreased. Not because he stopped caring about his family or his farm, but because his care and attention were now focused on what was actually needed in each present moment, rather than scattered across 1,000 future disasters that might never occur. This story Sarah tells while sitting beside the stream, and you understand deeply that you are the anxious farmer. You have been paying the debt twice for months or years. You have been suffering in advance about futures that might never arrive. You have been using worry as a failed strategy to protect yourself and your loved ones, not realizing that it was protecting nothing while destroying your present moment and your health and your peace. The recognition is both sobering and liberating. By the time you return from the forest, darkness has fallen, and the center's lights create a warm glow against the night. The moon has risen, and its soft light illuminates the path you walk. Sarah gathers everyone one final time for a brief evening teaching before people head to their quarters for sleep. Tonight I want to teach you something crucial, she says, as everyone settles into comfortable seated positions in the meditation hall, candlelit and peaceful and intimate. The candles flicker slightly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and there's a sense of sacred space, of containment, of safety. And that is that anxiety itself is your teacher. Anxiety is information about how your mind is working. When you notice anxiety arising, instead of rejecting it, or fighting it, or being ashamed of it, you can ask it, "What are you trying to teach me? What pattern am I running? What belief about myself or the world is underlying this anxiety?" She pauses and lets this land deeply. Sometimes anxiety teaches you that you're genuinely not prepared for something and need to do something practical. That's useful information. You might need to study harder for a test, or practice more for a presentation, or have a difficult conversation that you've been avoiding. In those cases, the anxiety is signaling something real and actionable. But usually, especially with generalized anxiety, the anxiety is teaching you about your relationship with uncertainty. It's teaching you that you're trying to control things you can't control. It's teaching you that you have a harsh inner critic who tells you you're not good enough. It's teaching you that you're living partially in an imagined future rather than in this actual present moment. It's teaching you that you're treating potential events like they're already happening. And all of this is useful information once you understand how to read it. She stands and walks slowly around the room, speaking softly. Your anxiety is not your enemy. It's not proof that something is wrong with you. It's your mind and nervous system doing what they've learned to do, based on your history, based on your conditioning, based on your past experiences and what you believe about yourself. The nervous system is trying to protect you, even when its threat assessment is inaccurate. And once you understand that, you can work with it skillfully. You can retrain your nervous system through repeated exposure to uncertainty without catastrophe. You can update your beliefs through inquiry and investigation. You can practice being present through meditation and mindfulness. You can build new neural pathways through deliberate practice. This is what you've been learning here, and this is what you'll continue learning as you integrate these teachings into your daily life. Your anxiety is your teacher. Listen to it with curiosity rather than judgment, and as you do, you'll discover that it has less and less power over you. Not because it disappears, but because you've changed your relationship with it. You've stopped seeing it as your enemy and started seeing it as information, as a messenger, as part of your wisdom system, trying to keep you safe. As you settle in for rest tonight and the darkness draws closer, you lie down, knowing that you've been fundamentally changed by what you learned at that retreat center. Not changed in the sense of being permanently fixed. You're not naive enough to believe that, not anymore. But changed in your capacity to work with difficulty. Changed in your understanding of anxiety. Changed in your relationship with your own mind. Changed in your understanding of what it means to be alive. As you drift towards sleep, noticing the texture of your breath, the expanding and contracting of your abdomen with each breath, the weight of your body on the bed, the way your mind gradually slows down as your body settles. You feel genuine gratitude for Sarah and the teachings and the simple fact that human beings can, through practice and willingness and understanding, free themselves from unnecessary suffering. The gratitude itself isn't forced or performed. It arises naturally from the recognition that you've been given something precious, something that few people ever find, not a permanent solution to life's difficulties, but a way of relating to those difficulties that doesn't add suffering on top of suffering. You understand now, falling into sleep, that the anxiety may return at times, especially during periods of genuine stress or loss, that challenges will continue to emerge because that's the nature of life, that loss and uncertainty and change are always going to be part of the human condition. You're not expecting to achieve some permanent state of bliss or peace. That would just be another form of the same mistake, trying to arrange your experience so that you're always comfortable, which is impossible. but you've learned something that no amount of anxiety can take from you. You've learned how to meet all of it with presence instead of reactivity, with wisdom instead of fear, with the understanding that everything that happens, the good and the difficult, the wanted and the unwanted, is simply what it means to be alive. And that understanding is a kind of freedom that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's a freedom you carry with you, that you practice into being each morning, that reveals itself more fully the more you're willing to simply sit and pay attention to what is actually here, right now, in this moment. Sleep comes easily now, and your dreams reflect the peace of having finally understood something essential about how to live.